Uh, okay, so welcome. This is our second monthly webinar that NCDEA has started hosting this year. Last year, we went through a strategic planning process, and one of the things that came up for us was really trying to offer more opportunities virtually and other options for employees to receive training on a variety of different topics. And so we decided we were going to go ahead and host a monthly webinar. We have a whole calendar of topics that we've been working on. This month is kind of an education focus. Last month, we had a session on social media, some of the do's and don'ts, and record keeping as it relates to social media. That one is posted on the NCDEA website under our training page. This one will also go there. So if you have people in your office or in your state who are unable to attend today, the recording will be up probably in the next couple of days. It takes us a little bit of time to get that put up, but it will go up under that training page, so you can access it there. And going forward, we will have our webinars. You can mark them off on your calendar the fourth Wednesday of every month. So 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central, and those of you in between can convert that. So next month, in June, it'll be June 26th. We have a great lineup of speakers talking about grants, grant management, some grant writing tips, and then also talking about cost recovery within your grant programs that you have. So a great opportunity to hear a little bit about grants from some experts across the country. So just some housekeeping today. You'll see none of you have video. Everyone is muted. You can put questions in the question and answer box. If you have a question as we're going, feel free to type it in there and we will work. I will moderate and ask our panelists your questions. There will be time at the end of each of their presentations. And then if we have time at the very end, we will try and do some additional questions. So please feel free to type those in if there's anything that you want to know or that you want clarity on. So we have two fantastic speakers for you today. We have Tokina Mcharry, who is with the James River Conservation District in the great state of North Dakota. And we have Mandy Parks, who is with the Inland Empire Resource Conservation District in California. And so two kind of different perspectives on education for you today. So we're going to go ahead and start with Mandy Parks, and I'll let you take it away, Mandy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah, for the wonderful intro and the invite to be here today. My presentation is on design and facilitation of effective indoor education. We have some other education staff at my office, one of whom produced a lot of this training today, but unfortunately was not able to give it. So I'm here presenting on just kind of how we developed, how we facilitate, how we try to fund and try to continue to improve our conservation education in our service area. And as Sarah said, she's going to be moderating. So if you have questions, ask. If it's super time sensitive, Sarah, feel free to interrupt me, and definitely interrupt me if my audio starts to go. I feel good about it so far. But thank you. I'm really excited to be here today. So really quickly, just one of the things that Sarah and I serve on the National Conservation District Employees Association Board. And one of the things we've been working on is soliciting feedback from people and just asking people to take a quick, like 4 to 5 minute survey on where they really need training of everything offered. What would they like to see people focus on? And education below, I believe, social media education outreach was probably the biggest topic. And so we wanted to just think about, what really would help people that range, in attendee needs. There's a lot of different people, I think, on today. Some people have a program moving, some people don't at all, some people are in between. And so trying to kind of hit those points where you might want to think about starting, and then maybe where you might want to expand if you already are doing education. So I'm going to go over just briefly, looking at goal setting for your program, design, facilitating your program, conducting outreach to be as effective as possible, funding and potential expansion, and then some resources for people at the very end. Okay. So really quickly, Sarah introduced our district. We are a resource conservation district. I don't think there's another state where districts are called RCDs. I think it's just us in California. But we're the same sort of district as everybody, whether your district is soil and water conservation, soil conservation, just conservation. We're all kind of our local go-to for agriculture support, and then different areas of resource work that you need, your community really needs. In our district, we do some education. We work a lot with, we're co-located with NRCS and do a lot of outreach on behalf of their programming. Work in fire and forestry. We have a district that includes a lot of national forest. And so that's kind of been a big topic, especially as we've seen increase in wildfire. So we try to work on prevention, stakeholder engagement, things like that. And then just looking at open space preservation to the greatest extent possible. For anyone that's been to Redlands, California, that's where our office is headquartered. It's kind of between Los Angeles and Palm Springs, been to SoCal. And we live in one of the most rapidly urbanizing areas in the state of California. A lot of the coastal areas are developed or protected, and inland Southern California is becoming, just rapidly developed. So there's a lot of competition for land, which does make delivery of, conservation work challenging, but, has really given us something to focus on and helps us approach, I think, resource management in a way that makes sense. But, we're all improving, we're all always learning, but that's kind of a unique challenge of where we are. And then Sarah already touched on NCDEA, but we have been an organization since our humble beginnings in 1992. And our whole purpose is to help employees be more effective. So making connections, facilitating training, soliciting feedback and understanding kind of where to push that feedback, and then organizing in region groups so that we can kind of organize ourselves around commonalities where they exist, and work in kind of smaller groups to do trainings, have discussions. Every region is organized differently. My region, the Pacific region, is not super organized, but we have tried to start addressing that. And this next week, we're having our second employee meetup that's associated with our the NACD region meeting, Pacific region meeting. So in addition to that, I have a mailing list. If you'd like to be on it, we're always, sending updates, information. And then I meet with people from different states and territories on just specific issues and how I might be able to help them. It's really what we try to do at NCDA. If you're interested in anything else, as Sarah said, come to the website, see what we've got posted, and your region reps are there. Get in touch with one of us, and we would love to talk more with you. Okay, so I'm sure this is very obvious to everybody, but when I thought about describing just education programming, I really thought about just the critical part of developing specific goals. What do you want out of your program? Again, it's such a simple question, but it's an important one. Do you not have anything right now? Do you have some kind of educational capacity? Are you in classrooms all over your district? Are you doing field trips? Are you partnering? And then do you want to keep it that way? Would you like to expand? Where exactly do you want to be in level of function? And then within that level, are you really focused on getting, kind of compliance, the mission and vision of your district? Are you concerned about elevating district profile? And, a lot of situations still, even after we've established more of an educational presence, we still have people asking who the IE or CD is. What do we do? What are we? Thinking we're a nonprofit. So that's, part of our focus when we get out and educate, helping people understand who we are. Are you, is one of the things you'd like to do really impact community behavior? People need messaging on a very specific resource concern, general resources. Do you want to use education to connect to other district programs? There's obviously options beyond that. But really thinking about what you would like to get out of it is obviously going to really drive kind of next steps. And so I did want to just make a quick, like talk quickly in the next slide about the potential to begin tabling or going to outreach events. This is a really great opportunity if you're not a district that currently does a lot of education. The ability to get into community events through a variety of ways, educate on behalf of your specific district priorities, your community needs, engaging with people, helping them understand you exist, what you've got coming up, are all things obviously you can do with tabling. And I'm not sure who here has not done it, who is doing it, but just wanted to comment on just the importance of really doing this strategically, like kind of thinking about what their capacity is and how to move that up so that your presence is more known and you can support partners at events, function independently eventually, and really have a nice logoed, branded presence at these things where people understand who you are, and it increases opportunities for partnering. So for us, before any event attended, even if you're already out tabling, we create just talking points for whomever is going to be representing our district, and definitely focused on things you want to promote. Why are you at that event? Are you just talking about your district? Is there a partner program you want to promote? Things like that. Events are really typically free, but sometimes, if you're a one-person show or a halftime, position show, it might be easier to piggyback on with someone else who's attending, a partner that's going to events. We've co-tabled a lot with the NRCS and actually have co-tabled with other partners. It just kind of reduces the pressure to have everything set up and have giveaways and pay a fee if involved and organize everything. So it's a nice way to kind of get started if you aren't already doing it. And then really allows you to do things like develop a low-cost handout, maybe a quarter sheet, try to get people to come to your table, talk a little bit about, strategic objectives. We also encourage among our staff, and just it's something I think about, is attendance strategic, which sounds silly, I guess, or I don't know, maybe a little too formal, but there are so many events, especially around Earth Day, you could go to everything. So we try to think about, is this event going to be consistent with, what we're trying to promote? Are we going to draw people that might be interested in our programs or partner programs? We know we have to pick and choose. We can't be everywhere. So we want to pick just the highest impact events. And then we want to set up in a way that announces ourselves on a budget. We're always thinking about our budget. But if we could at least get a logoed tablecloth, there are cheap providers of these things. For imprint is incredibly cheap. And then thinking about how we're kind of announcing ourselves to attendees. We always try to reduce waste, which is cheaper anyway. So instead of making a ton of flyers, we'll put one flyer in a plastic frame and encourage people to take a picture of it, tape a flyer to your table, put a QR code on it, encourage people to take a picture of that, but just kind of save money and then also stick with just kind of conservation messaging while you're out at events. And then also looking at low cost activities and giveaways. There's a couple of pictures on this slide. One of them is a child with a butterfly activity that is incredibly cheap. Kids love it. And something that, brings them over. We always do a couple before the event, hang them at our table, brings kids over. Just my random suggestion is buying something like donut holes, which is really cheap. You don't have plastic waste and you always get kids. And then you might get their reluctant parents following them, but you can get a conversation started that way. And then the top two pictures, I wanted to give examples of just the kind of strategic messaging that you might be doing. In my district, we have an issue with the gold-spotted oak borer. It's a boring beetle that moved into our region probably 5 years ago. It was first documented. It's spreading through, they think primarily firewood movement. And so outreach events are a great chance to get people understanding what it looks like. So we bring bark samples and show them what entry and exit holes look like. So just in designing strategic outreach, as long as we're there, as long as we're, handing out materials and doing crafts, it would be a great way to help property owners understand, hey, if your tree is showing signs of stress, if you have entry and exit holes that look like this, call us and we'll help you with next steps. And then again, finally, just to wrap up this slide, thinking about what is the purpose of going to the event? Why are you going? And I challenge myself to think that way, ask staff to think that way too. And, just try to make the most out of it if we're going to take the time to be there. So beyond the things that we've talked about already, for IERCD, we really wanted to create an education program just to think about bringing some funding in, increasing staff capacity so that we could find some monies to either, pay for part or totally fund the work that we wanted to do in classrooms. So finding funding, this is, I think, something we all struggle with. And the balance of you have time to write the grant, but if you don't get the grant and you committed, weeks of time, it's, always such a balancing act. For people that are really, really new and don't have a ton of programming and are looking to develop, I did want to mention, if you don't know, the National Association of Conservation Districts has a really small Friends of NACD grant program. It's $2,500, which really is enough for staff time and some materials to develop the foundation of a program. It might not pay for a lot of performance of that program, but researching and creating materials and getting ready to go into schools, it could definitely fund that. Their website has a ton of information. If you Google that Friends of NACD grant, they have examples that were just approved in this last grant cycle. Two of which focus on this exact topic. Two different districts did development of educational programs, which is really cool. Their next cycle is coming up. It says anticipated in fall of 2024, who knows? But it seems like a really easy process. And no matter how functional you are, it seems like a really easy way to get $2,500 and get NACD to, kind of see your success story at your district. For larger kind of in progress, the Environmental Protection Agency has a great educational grant listserv. They have an annual grant program that gives big awards out. They would probably want to see an existing program or developed idea, to get that funding, but it's really, really great program. So, and there's a million grants. I just put a couple that I thought people might be interested in, that cycles are coming up. And NACD also has urban ag grants, but the cycle just closed. It'll open again next spring, or next, I think, early spring, late winter, early spring. And those have more of a technical assistance slant, but they also are able to go into supplemental education and outreach, so you could fund some development there. And then something that I've heard other districts do that IERCD started doing is partnering with local governance and utilities, many of whom have a messaging mandate associated with the work that they're doing. So just regionally, I was thinking about like sometimes gas and electric companies have a requirement because of the power lines they operate. They have to complete education, provide funding to advance, kind of community awareness of fire, being more resilient. Water districts often have to, I think everybody in California, and I'm sure in other states, have a similar mandate to help reduction in use. And then just locally, we have an air quality management district that has funding to increase awareness of the risks of air pollution, wanting to get people, kind of engaged in mitigation of that impact. And so all these things are really potential funders because many of these agencies don't have, super dedicated education departments. They're not necessarily easily able to kind of staff up, staff down, partner. I don't know that they have the flexibility that conservation districts seem to have. And so that partnership can be really, really effective. They need us, and we definitely need them. And so just a great opportunity to think about an annual fee-for-service contractual relationship where you develop some messaging in partnership with this provider. They give you some funding, and then you complete kind of an annual like scope of work based on what you feel comfortable doing and something that meets their needs. So that's really what I'm going to touch on today. We have some other topics, but water conservation is one that we have found funding for because we live in a dry area. So that is a big mandate for water providers in this region. But for any education program, thinking about design, if you're getting money from somewhere, it has to be attractive, to the funder. They need to make sure that you're representing them and saying what they'd like you to say, what they're representing to regulatory, whoever's breathing down their necks that you're out there saying. And then it also needs to be attractive to teachers. And there's a lot of ways to do this. Every education program doesn't have to have all these components, but certainly it's helpful to connect education programming to standards. There are NGSS standards in 20 states. If you're not in the standards group, typically states have their own standards. It's easy to find them just Googling, but NGSS does include that 20 state group. Typically, it's nice to give teachers something before you come in so they know what to expect. They can get their class ready. Having an engaging program really helps limit behavioral problems. It's nice to have educators that have some sort of educational background rather than necessarily having a content expertise. I would actually I think it's more successful to have someone come in and do education programs that have experience in classrooms versus someone that's an expert in soil or water. They can learn and present content to kids. I think it's a little bit harder to learn how to interact with kids effectively. And then it's also nice for teachers if you show them you've got follow-up to underscore content that they can take back and, kind of keep working with their kids. And then for both, obviously, professional looking documents and presentations. If you're not on Canva, get on it right away. Make a free account today. I can't say enough about Canva. Even someone completely lame and not good at design and things like that, I can make Canva work for me. Looks really nice, and funders love it. If you're on it already, good to keep skill building as much as you possibly can, which I'm sure people are doing. But the next few slides are just some examples of how we're meeting funder requirements. So one of the special districts we partner with is the San Bernardino Valley Water Conservation District. They have a mission and mandate that requires them to manage groundwater for sustainability and long-term supply. And they do monitoring, habitat work. They address impacts through mitigation. And they really want the messaging out in the public about who they are, what they do, and encouraging people to think about water as a precious resource and thinking about how their role in use. And so they can think about their role in saving it. So these are just a couple of quick excerpts of how we kind of sell this idea to the Water Conservation District. Why should they pay us to go into classrooms? We're going to create some engaging material for the kids with an overview of what the Water Conservation District does, their logo, making sure kids understand their value in the community. That's a big one for them. We're also going to engage kids by making it interactive if we can. You don't have to do this. I've seen really excellent presentations using flip charts, paper. This is something that we've transitioned to over the years, but I think any classroom education, using bright colors, things like that is always something kids are going to be into. This is something that really gets kids to understand real water usage, that it isn't just about drinking water or taking showers, that water is involved in so many aspects of our lives. And we encourage them. It doesn't mean you can't eat a cheeseburger. It just means, we've got to think about how important water is so we can hold ourselves accountable to save it. And then the Water Conservation District also wants to see at the end of the presentation that kids listened and understood. So we do a real quick quiz, give them kind of content retention quiz, and it's easy, it's not difficult. But then we can tell the water conservation district, because of our program, 90% of kids got each question right. 75% of kids could name you guys as providing the services you're providing. So that gets us closer to be able, to get funded by them. These are just kind of slide examples of content we develop on their behalf that they end up funding. Okay, so then also just a little bit more detail about making things attractive to educators. Standards are not, they don't need to be on every slide. You don't have to correlate every single component of your presentation to a standard. But it does help teachers have you in their classroom if you can say, this does correspond to state science standards. And it can be simple. I just put one up for second grade. They're supposed to understand, they're supposed to be able to determine if plants need sunlight and water to grow. They're supposed to understand this principle. And so that's really easy to weave into a resource conservation district presentation. It's something we use in a to kids where we talk about what plants need and they name the components of life for plants, and it meets the standard. It also advances what we're there to talk about. So where that can happen, as much as it can happen, all the better, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Another thing that, we found teachers like, this is certainly not necessary, but it's something if you're already doing education to think about maybe adding. This is a Canva template. It's a save as situation completely. Change the colors, change out the content. It looks professional, and it's really just on the right is a vocabulary list about what we're coming to talk about. And on the left is one of our activities we suggest that teachers think about doing before we come in. If we, suggest anything to a teacher, we want it to be free or very low cost, easy, not super messy. This one is probably on the messier side, but it just helps illustrate what a watershed is by looking at water movement. If we're coming in to talk about watersheds, a lot of times I think the kids have never heard that word. They're not super familiar. So it's a cool way to introduce vocabulary and get kids ready. It's certainly not required, and not every teacher will even use it. But for a good teacher, it's, a fun component of what makes education effective. By the time you get into the classroom, the kids have heard the words, they've played around, they've made this watershed. And so it kind of maybe has sunk in their brains just a little bit more, so that when you start talking about watershed plus non-point source pollution or water supply or things like that, the burden of explaining what that concept is less. And then also just program design with kids in mind, making things, first of all, fun. That's what this slide is. It's about as fun as I get. I'm not great at these things. I did not do any of this design. This is the woman who is going to be speaking today. She's so creative and fun, but really thinking about making it kid friendly and age appropriate. So we split programs into, age groups. So kindergarten and first grade, the same program can get presented to either class. Second and third has the same level, fourth and fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, using standards, content is similar. And it lets us, we don't have to maintain, 12 different presentation levels for a single topic for each grade. They can kind of be done in grade groups. We also, especially if we have to set up, we start with what's called a starter. And it's just something you can write it on the board. If they've got a chalkboard, if they have a wipe off board, it could be a question, anything to get the kids thinking. What can they, like, if you're there to talk about water, can they think of 3 ways that they waste water? How can they save water? Just something a little bit fun, accessible, and not needing teacher support, so that you can get set up if you need to, and they're kind of ready to learn. They're warmed up kind of. Then we set expectations. We do just a little agenda about what we're talking about. We also mix content. We try to have interactive with just straight up information. If we, as much as we can, it's nice to have an out of seat activity, and it's nice to have something they can take home. Programs that are not funded don't have all these things. Programs that are funded, it's easier to do these things. I'm going to talk a little bit later about what funding can pay for. But really having a water provider partner who wants you out messaging in the community, you don't just need to ask for your time or your mileage. They can buy classroom models like Enviroscapes, they can buy giveaways, they can buy materials to make a water cycle bracelet. The sky's the limit for bigger, better funded districts often. And when you can show them that you're going to get in the classroom and message on their behalf effectively, they have seemed more willing to open up their checkbook to us. So these are just some components of what makes a class presentation successful. Okay, why is it not advancing? Oh, there we go. Okay, so these are just examples. We have some different topics. This is from our Farm to Table program. It's just trying to help kids understand where local produce comes from, why they should support it, what's beneficial about it. And so I always kind of want to talk to them. What are we actually going to talk about? This is the time to set expectations also. A good, confident educator, will know how to do that. And probably our best training and success in building skill in the classroom has come from just informal discussion and help from teachers. A good teacher knows how to handle his or her own classroom much better than I ever would, and they've got little tricks. And their biggest one is getting kids engaged, keeping them engaged as much as possible so that they don't get bored and act out. Isn't always going to be perfect, but to be delivering the program, the whole point is getting kids to listen, understand, take that information home, modify behavior. So it would be really incredible if they did listen and they did get really engaged. My kids have had some of these programs and they did come home and talk to me about it, show me their water cycle bracelet. I could see that it was an impact in the classroom from this woman, again, who was supposed to do the presentation today. She's really good. We also just introduce IERCD, try to explain to them who we are. Again, most adults don't know who we are. So we just try to make the kids know what are we? It's hard to explain. Probably the average kid isn't going to come away with a great idea of what we're doing, but kind of explaining that to them. If we are getting funded by somebody, we highlight the partnership for the kids and for the adults in the room, just to keep branding and giving credit to that funding partner. Very quickly, because I'm running a little bit long. This is just a brief overview. When we have a soil program, which doesn't sound very exciting, but it is fun. And so just quickly, we go over some components. This is just a summary of what we talk about, but just trying to get them to understand, like, why does healthy soil matter? What is important about that? And we do that through going over mixing up, content on soil layers, conservation practices, connection between like human activity and functionality, talking about the Dust Bowl, soil development, all those things. And then making sure they have some time for hands-on. There's some really inexpensive materials, soil sifters. And we bought with grant money handheld microscopes. And that I think brings, even more engagement to like understanding the application of the content they just learned. What does the soil layer look like? They can see that with a sifter. What's some more detail on soil with a handheld microscope? It's actually really cool, even for the teacher, to look through those. So that's kind of a summary of how we would approach that specific program, and some of the content we would be giving and just how we would structure it. If you want to include standards on your slides, you certainly can. This is that next generation science standards, or NGSS. You're kind of underscoring to teachers, we're hitting the standard, we're talking about this so that they can feel good about being in their classroom. If it's a tough sell for any reason to their administration, they can tell them these are standards connected programs. I saw them myself, if you want to do that. Normally, we also just give them a list of standards hit. We don't always have them on the slide. And then just a couple of examples of why Canva is so amazing. This is all Canva. They can do animation. They can do just these simple kind of little animations, just kind of using it to make kind of what is a boring slide interesting. I don't think most kids are dying to know about infiltration or aquifers, but that kind of stuff, incorporation of bright colors and movement, seems to capture their attention. So it's one idea. Also keeping them engaged, asking them to do things throughout the presentation. We have to have them understand that we're in the Santa Ana River watershed and the major river is Santa Ana. So it's simple to just put, can you point out the Santa Ana River? You don't even need to write it on the slide. You could say it. But it's an example about just every single slide. There could be some sort of question, interactive, like getting kids listening and thinking, calling on different kids. This is obviously not a hard question. So maybe a kid that's struggling, behavior wise could be engaged through something like this. And then this is a really easy and kind of fun one, is guessing how many gallons it takes for each program. Each, example, a hamburger, like just things like that. I see Sarah has reappeared, so I'm going to briefly go through the rest of these. Let's see. I just have a couple more slides, Sarah. We also have in our district, there's a lot of Spanish speakers, a lot. And so we do have people that are bilingual on staff, and they do programs in Spanish because that's what we need to support our community. So it's something that I look for when we hire and when we create content. These are just Canva outreach to the community. We do social media outreach, but that I don't think is very effective. One of our biggest social media users is my mother, and she's not requesting programs. So I think being someone who loves the library, the community center, I think physical flyer drop off, partner sharing is way more effective to get this in the hands of someone that's going to see it, understand it's free, and schedule it. And then just really quickly, I'm going to put these templates onto ncda.us, but it's just an example that you can feel empowered to make your own contract, your own pricing. You can capture your costs. You can ask a better funded district, just like we do. There are way bigger funded districts than us. Ask a better funded district to cover your costs. Don't subsidize their requirement to educate on behalf of their resource concerns. Make sure you're, capturing costs for how long it takes to develop presentations, advertise, travel, supplement materials, all those things. And so those are things, I'm not going to go over this slide. It's an awful slide, but I was thinking in sharing the presentations, you can just read it. This is just a cheat sheet. This is what I think makes a successful program. Very easy things that you can start today to do. And then just a quick resources page on, what might be available to help you along. And certainly, again, checking ncda.us for the video on this, and then also templates that can be useful for you in advancing your education program, however you would like it to look. So that is it. Sorry I went over, Sarah. I really got carried away. But that's it. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop share.
That was awesome, Mandy. Thank you so much. I don't see any questions in our box. One thing I loved personally is just thinking about utilizing those other partners for some of our asking for money to cover some of those costs. I think we all, most of us, my district included, constantly think we have to do things for free and we shouldn't charge, and we should try and figure out how to cover those costs. So it's always good to hear some ideas on how to get some of that covered. So wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Next up, we have Tokina Mcharry. Again, she's from the James River Soil Conservation District, and she's going to talk again a little bit about education, but low cost. So things that you can do without a ton of money, which I think we all appreciate. So I'll turn it over to you, Tokina.
Yeah, we'll just say I'm a cheapskate. No, and this is how we do it. No, let me get my presentation.
I think we can all relate.
Oh, let's see. Now, that is not what I wanted to do. Where did it? See if I can get this. Oh. There we go.
There
How
it
does
is.
that look? That looks better. Okay. So yeah, like Sarah said, my name is Tokina Mcharry. I work with the James River Soil Conservation District. We are located in southeast North Dakota. Very small district, as you guys will see quickly. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we started our education program, because this wasn't an easy sell to our Board of Supervisors. So just a little bit about our demographics here. That's where our county is located, and our total population is just right around 5,000. So right there, you're gonna quickly see some differences between Mandy's presentation, which was great, and how we tackled the topic of youth education. So we have two main towns in our county, both each has their own K through 12 school system. So why did we see a need for this? Like most districts around the country, we did our traditional tours and demonstrations and our meetings for like our agricultural producers, but we noticed that our attendance would decline and they were almost developing like this apathetic attitude. And so I felt like that just kind of went hand in hand, and it was really frustrating because how do I combat that? Like, what are we missing as a district? And then I guess just another little bit of a background, how our district is set up. We have one full-time employee and two part-time employees. And then of course we have a few seasonals that will come on when we do like tree planting, but that's all we have for staff. So we did our meetings for producers. We would do a Ladies of Ag event every other year. There were the stewardship materials available, which were great, but a lot of that was for youth, and we knew that we were not utilizing it like we should in our county. So when I had first started, our main youth activities were eco-ed, which is it's a program that's funded through EPA 319 grants in our state. And it's like a outdoor classroom tour for 6th or 7th graders. And then we had this Project Trees, which was an individual who would come around and do school programming for some of the younger grades. But really, then the whole time that these kids were in school, those were the only two opportunities that they were potentially exposed to any kind of environmental or natural resource conservation that promoted like what we wanted them to know about. So we wanted to do more. So we really started very small. We started with the easy things like Earth Day. Earth Day is always something, it's a beautiful time of year. Teachers want to get outside. And so we kind of jumped in. And so we started with the 3rd grade, and we would come in every year and we'd do a yearly presentation. Typically it would revolve around that stewardship theme that's provided by the National Association. And it was great. The teachers liked it, but yet we still felt like we were like there, you see how you can connect with those kids, and like, we wanted to do more. So then Arbor Day was another option. A lot of our local cities, they want to have this Tree City USA. Well, they have to do some kind of an activity, typically around Arbor Day. So then we were able to work with some of the city governments in doing tree planting, and then we would incorporate a classroom or two from the schools. But again, it was like small. It wasn't quite the broadcasted message that we wanted. So then I started noticing things when my own kids started school. It's not that science wasn't important, but they have these state standards. And so science would just kind of get looped in with maybe math and something else. And it wasn't science like I remembered it being in school. And then I started noticing different things about their library collections, which I'll get into in a little bit in more detail. But I also noticed that the teachers were super willing to have guest speakers in. And I thought, okay, this is my foot in the door because I have kids that are starting school. So I thought we have to like jump on it now. And it might not be the same in all schools. This is just something that I personally noticed. So I actually started with the local school libraries. So I met with each librarian and I said, would you be willing to allow us to have what I called a conservation book nook. And so all that meant is that we purchased a high quality bulletin board if they had space in their library. And I said, every month I will come in and I will change the topic. I will pull books from your current collection, set them up there just so kids can see it. And the librarians, both of them, were totally for it. It didn't take much convincing at all. I think it was fairly cheap. I mean, each bulletin board, I just looked it up this morning on Amazon and it's around $200, but these specific ones that I purchased are like a recycled rubber, so they stay looking really nice. And then we just purchased a simple little display that can go on the bottom that identifies us. So another kind of a side note, a benefit, so we have the 2 school libraries, and then each town also has the public library. So depending on your situation, whether you want to go through the school library or to a public library and make this, you know, offer this, I guess that would be up to you, up to each individual. One of the advantages that we have is one of our libraries is a school and a public library combined. So I also not only do I get K through 12 students seeing this bulletin board, I also get members of the community who come in. So sometimes like in the summer, I might have a bulletin board that's a little bit more maybe an interest to an adult. So these are just a couple quick examples of, and this is just like I had a list of topics and I bought a cheap laminator and just made something that was somewhat eye-catching for students. And it really is amazing. You know, I'll go in 2 weeks later and the books will all be checked out. And so for me, that's a benefit. I'm like, somebody's looking at those books. And so I probably now have a rotating collection of 25 different topics, and I just keep rotating them through the 2 different school libraries. So then that led to I wasn't always finding books that I wanted that would correlate with my topics. And I was noticing my kids were encouraged to read nonfiction. And I'm like, if they need to read a nonfiction book, why can't they be checking out a book on wetlands or, you know, food chains or something like that? And the school didn't have them. So then our district pursued a book donation program. And yeah, these are just some quick facts, but basically they give me a budget. And I just try to be really thrifty and get as many books as I can. And now that's how we've been able to branch into, we do have one Hutterite colony in our county, and they have like their own little school there, but they also have a little library. And so I've been able to provide them with some of these books that are on conservation-based topics, which is great. So if this is something that you think you may be interested in, I just have a few tips. Whoops. So every book gets a sticker on the front that talks really briefly about our mission, gives our website, and I know parents see these because I have one of our board members, he's like, yeah, my grandson came for the day and he had his library books and he sent me a picture, and sure enough, one of them had this sticker. They're called Grandpa's books for his grandkids. So I think that's really cool. And it's just another way that you might get those parents' attention because, you know, the way I pitched it to my board, and our board is really now seeing the benefit, is if you can start when these kids are young, then the parents maybe get a better idea that our soil conservation district isn't just about planting trees or, you know, whatever. They sometimes just group you in with those other government agencies in the office. It's like, no, we're doing more to, there's more to our mission than just that. So if you are interested in setting up this, a couple things to look at. Does your school have a reading program? For instance, here they use something called AR, accelerated reader or something like that, but you can Google it. You can look up what books are on that. So what that means is the kids read a book, they're able to take a quiz on that book, an online quiz through this AR program. And that's how the teachers can gauge like what their reading level is and comprehension and whatnot. So my kids don't want to check out a book. Don't want to check out a book that's not on that AR program. So I researched that. for them to make sure that I'm getting books that are on that. Most libraries, you can search their collection online, so you'll see very quickly what they have available. If you're looking at purchasing books, obviously you want newer published ones because libraries go through a weeding system. So books that are over, I think it's 10 years, they look at how often they've been checked out. If they haven't been checked out, they just get weeded and tossed usually. So the newer the better. And then hardcover or library bound, definitely, because you want to give them something that's of quality. So personally, when I order, I do a lot of my own. Like I said, I'm a deal finder, so I'm searching Amazon. I look at book reviews, and then, you know, I might use Alibris. There's another one called Book Outlet. Some districts in our state who have adopted a similar program, they have larger, more schools. And so they actually just go through a book dealer and they say, I want to donate 2 books to every school in my county. If you could do it on the topic of trees. And those book dealers work enough with those librarians that they know what is best. And so it's easier, it would be less work. But if you do choose to do this, I mean, the biggest thing is just see if your librarians have a preference, because as I'll get into now, this has fostered further relationships that helped us unexpectedly enhance and expand our education program. With this, so I had a local librarian, she said, would you ever consider doing a story time for us? And I was like, okay. I mean, I wasn't going to say no. I didn't really know what to expect, but it's really taken off and blossomed. And so we go in once a month. There's what our little flyer looks like. And it's usually for preschool aged kids. And I mean, it's crazy. It started out very small, but now I get roughly 20 to 30 preschool kids each month. And we do a brief book, very brief. The whole thing probably lasts a half an hour, honestly. It's like a book and then some kind of a project. So whether we're talking about evergreens or conifers, you introduce them to that word, and then I bring in branches that we either sit outside and look at, or if it's in the winter, we're inside. So either something that they can feel and touch and look at, or just a little simple craft. So another district to the north of us did something similar, but they geared their projects towards like the probably like 4th to 6th grade age level. And so they're a little bit more involved, but they do it on a Saturday afternoon at their local library. So, I mean, the local library is, sometimes you catch kids who aren't in a traditional school system. Maybe they're homeschooled. You just get it's a little bit different than a classroom setting. And it's just a little free avenue. Like the libraries want to have people in there. They want to have that promotion too. So that might be something to consider. So these are just some pictures of just different activities, whether we're teaching them very basic difference between soils to butterfly life cycles to doing leaf rubbings. They're just a lot of fun. So then I just want to kind of transition a little bit from that, because once that really took off, we started focusing back on our elementary students, and we thought, okay, we have this great relationship with our 3rd grade. How can we continue that through the rest of the elementary school? So I just sent out an email to all the elementary teachers in our 2 schools saying, hey, this is what we have to offer. Like Mandy talked about, whenever possible, you definitely correlate it to their standards, because if the teachers know that, hey, I don't have to prep for this specific standard, they're going to come in and take care of it, then you are on their agenda like every year. And so it started with just a few, and then it spread really fast. The teachers, just like I said, they love it, and the students love it. They don't want to listen to their teacher necessarily every day in and out. So now our typical education program in both schools, we typically hit every K through 4 classroom. First grade, for instance, we hit multiple times. We're in that classroom 4 times a year with the program. And it's great because, like I said, we have it set up. We know exactly what we're going to do every year. We know what time of year that's going to happen. And it just flows really well. This is one of my favorite ones that we did. This was with 4th graders, and they're learning about different habitats and things in North Dakota. So we bring a wetland to the classroom. So we go, we get water, we have them looking at the macroinvertebrates. They're looking at hydric soil, the different grasses. We have furs that we can utilize. And I just love it because now when these 4th graders come back as 6th graders to our eco ed, they remember things. They're like, hey, somebody came into our classroom and we learned about this, this, and this. We learned, they hear hydric soil and it isn't completely foreign to them. So in my mind, that's a win. So if I had to give my biggest piece of advice, I would say don't reinvent the wheel by any means. Don't feel like you have to start from ground zero. Just tweak different things that you find to suit your needs. Steal from others, basically. So of course, the NACD resources are great. You can download their education guides. They have things that you can just print off. I really love the pollinator field day curriculum that they put out a few years back. That's been amazing for resources to use during the nicer months, at least for us, which is a small window up here. This is just an example of one of them where, it'll give you activities, it'll give you book connections, whatever resources. And as you start digging into them, you might not use everything, but if you can just find one thing that you can use, then you've saved yourself some time. So this is their theme one year was Dig It, the secrets of soil. And so, like I said, we had kids looking at basic textures of soil. We had a soil tunnel that we borrowed from another county that kids could climb through. We usually do a brief, presentation. My presentation isn't nearly as pretty as Mandy's. I do a little bit with Canva, but I know I need to be better at it. So, this is another awesome resource for activities. This is a fun one where you can really connect it to agriculture if you live in an agriculture community. You make pancakes with them and you talk about, well, where does your milk come from? Where does your wheat come from? And I have a little hand mill and they can grind some wheat into flour. And it's just a lot of fun. And they can shake their own butter. I mean, you can kind of hit all these little things all at once. But yeah, this is an awesome resource. And some states have ag in the classroom as well. So like with North Dakota, they actually do mini grants. So this is one, we did a mini grant and did a riparian planting. So the kids learned about how some species of trees can just be, we'll shoot out a taproot. We talked about, the different structures there. And then we worked with a producer who had this riparian area and we put in a whole bunch of willow plugs that year. And that was all done through that grant. This is another website that I reference every so often because, like Mandy said, you need to keep those kids engaged. And so personally, my goal is that I always want to have something hands-on. So when the kids see us coming in, they know that I'm going to do a little bit of talking and then pretty soon we're going to have an experiment or something. So just another resource. In North Dakota, we have our Farm Bureaus Association. And so this was a fun project, very similar to that pancake one, but now this was with older kids and it's called Special Assignment Pizza. And again, they go around and we talk about, okay, the wheat, the milk products, the vegetables and the meat products. And what I really like about this one is we were able to partner with so many of our local agencies. So all the work just didn't fall on one agency. We all just took a station. And so we had SCD, NRCS, we had our local NDSU, our land grant university, their extension personnel came in and helped. just great fun. And then like a local business donated pizza so that the kids could actually walk out with a slice of pizza at the end of this. So again, you can tap into what other SCDs are doing, or even just attending a webinar like this to give you ideas. NRCS has a few of theirs. They have like the SAMI soil and the Mighty Mini microbe. So you can look at those and utilize those. And of course, like with me, especially when I'm doing that bookworm class, Pinterest is a lifesaver, or you just Google, preschool crafts on soil or whatever the case is, and you'll start coming up with crafts and ideas, and then it can just kind of grow from there. There's a lot of creative people out there. I am not one, but I certainly can tweak different things to make it work for what the message that we want to get across. And I think some of the biggest benefits for our district is, creating that relationship with the students. So maybe later in that year, you are out there and you are planting trees at their farm and they're waving and they're like, hey, you were in our classroom. And I'm like, that's exactly right. Because if the kids are making that connection, that's going to filter into the homes. And even here, some of the one school does a science fair. Well, now we have students coming in and they're like, hey, I was thinking about a project on this. Could you help us? So they're seeing us as a resource. And so that's a win in my mind, because now when that same individual is a young farmer or a beginning farmer, they're going to come back into the office and be like, hey, can you help me with this? And so that's really where we wanted to, we started with this group of older farmers, apathetic attitude. So we're coming in from the other side, and we want to target the individuals who are up and coming in our county. And then as far as promotion goes, we always plug it out to our local newspaper. And again, for some districts, it's probably not a big thing, but for us in our county, our newspaper comes out once a week. And so when you get something in the newspaper, like everybody sees it, and grandpas and grandmas are going to see it, and aunts and uncles. And so it's still a usable avenue for us. And then on social media as much as we can. Again, with that, you do have to be a little bit careful when you're going into the schools. Are there any students that I can't take photographs of, or are you okay with us posting things? And the teachers do know all of that. So, and they enjoy it. Like, they promote it on their school newsletters. You'll see it, and you'll see it on the school Facebook page. And so that's really awesome. So I added this last minute because Mandy talked about a grant opportunity. So if you do want to do something a little bit more involved, so the James River Soil Conservation District was actually one of the recipients of the Friends of NACD grant last year. So if you didn't see any of that was out there, this was our little project that we did, and we created these Explorer backpacks so that we had something when we held our events in the summer. We had something to utilize, because I was getting to the point where it's like I had all these ideas, but it's like, oh, I'm grabbing stuff from here and grabbing stuff from there. And I just got these, our grant consisted of these little custom made backpacks that are outfitted with magnifying glasses and binoculars and birding books, so that I get a group of kids out, everybody gets a backpack, and we can just get started right away. And so I feel like this has been a really good investment. We used them for the first time last summer, and these little kiddos just had a ball. Even if they were only netting little cabbage butterflies, they didn't care, to be able to look at them closer. And then, like I said, I can reuse them. So when I had the first grade classes come out to an educational, like some property that we have, it was just super easy. Every kid got a backpack, and we were on our way, going down the trail, looking at tree leaves or whatever it was. So don't feel like just because you're a small district, or you don't have all your ducks in a row, that it's not going to, you can't apply for this grant. It was a complete surprise to us, but it was awesome. And it really gave us a foundation now to build off of. And it's only going to enhance our education that we do for years to come. So with that, that is all I had. I feel like I just flew through that. So if there's any questions or anything, and then I do have just a few more pictures, whatever, and then my contact information. I guess I would encourage anybody with questions, if you think of them later or you're watching this later, feel free to reach out. I guess I didn't put my email on there, but that's okay. You can figure it out.
That was fantastic, Tokina. I love the bookworm kind of reading type things. I know a lot of districts in North Dakota have gotten into that and doing some more outreach with conservation reading corners, or, you know, just trying to get things out and available to folks in their library systems. So that's a great idea and relatively low cost. Honestly, we've actually gotten some books donated even from different groups where, so great ideas. Anybody have any questions? There's a couple comments. Presentations were great. Thank you. That they can't wait to share these ideas with coworkers. So that is always great to hear. I think it's fun to have different perspectives, like a much more urban setting and a much more rural setting in terms of like just how we can all make things work. There's so many similarities. You can adapt things to wherever you happen to be across the country, which is fantastic. And like Tokina said, I think it's so important to think about it as like, don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, somebody out there has probably done it. So either reach out to your state, reach out to your state employees association. If you have one, there's tons of great resources there. If they, you know, can't answer a question or give you thoughts on an idea, they can certainly point you in the right direction. Reach out to any of us. Again, anyone on the presentation today, you know, we're happy to help. Let's see, when are the monthly meetings again like this? So we will be doing our monthly webinar the 4th Wednesday of every month, is the plan. And so what will happen, we'll have the registration link will be on the homepage along with kind of the flyer as far as what what the topics are. And so you can register there, and then the region directors will send those out to all the states. How about what's done with staff, or do supervisors volunteer for your programs?
Yep. So for us, it's typically just staff. So I try to design my program, since I'm the education and outreach manager. It's like a one-man show. I mean, you know, your teachers can help to a certain extent, and maybe there might be a para in the classroom, but there are a few, like if we go into, we have an activity that we do for Earth Day with the kindergarten classrooms. And obviously with that level of kids, I try to get our other staff members to come and help. So if I can have 2 or 3 of us, it's more ideal that way. But our supervisors, I mean, they're farming. They don't want to come and play with little kids. No offense, but that's not on their not necessarily on their agenda unless we're really desperate. So like when we have our eco ed camp, that day activity with the 6th graders, they will come and they'll chaperone the different groups if we do ask. But
And I sometimes get supervisors. I have a couple of retired supervisors,
okay.
Who come if I ask. Sometimes they volunteer to come to things depending on when it is and what it is. So I utilize them too.
Well, and I think you could use, like this would be a good, like if there's an intern program at like a local college, like junior college or something like that, probably a lower cost person that could help out. And then we also do an employee share with the next door district. That's so easy. It's a really simple agreement between your 2 organizations. It just allows you to kind of cross district boundaries and lets people help each other. And that's one of the areas we work with them on, is like education delivery. Because it's funny, Tokina, I think you are the very rural and we're like so urban. We have 29 school districts that we serve. And so I feel like we don't even scratch the surface of all the kids in our district. I wish we could do more. I loved hearing like the kids that get 4th grade content come back and get 6th grade content. And I was wishing there was like a way we could track and do that. I just think it's so valuable for kids to be like, oh, I remember, you know? And then I see a question, I didn't touch on it because I just talked about indoor, but we do a really low cost field trip with, we have a small museum in the city that we're in. That we do a field trip there. It's like a multi-station trip that a water provider pays for. We talk about water, we talk about the museum. And for insurance, that really can get addressed by waivers. Like
Yep.
you can give a kid, make every kid who participates sign a waiver. And ours basically says, unless we light the kid on fire, like it's not our fault. They're being invited, they're willingly participating. You know, I've signed waivers like that as a parent. And so I think that's how you kind of make sure. And then the museum obviously has insurance, they're a county organization, but I would imagine, I mean, I guess Tokina, I would be interested if you're having it on like private property, if that's ever an issue, like on a farmer's property.
Right. So, with our youth, I'll just specifically talk about the youth stuff. So when school groups come out, the teachers take care of those waivers. So all those parents know that it's basically like a field trip. So this is what your kid is going to be doing. Do you want them to go? Do you not want to go? If they do go, you know, you're releasing them of any injury, whatever. And then when we do bring them on site, it's our soil conservation district property. So then we have our blanket liability, and our insurance person knows like, okay, we have this demonstration and education area. So we're going to have kids, we're going to have adults, we're going to have older people who are coming out to look at flowers and trees, whatever. And so that's all covered kind of under our blanket liability.
No, I totally misunderstood. I thought you were doing private property and I was like,
Oh, yeah.
she does that. Oh, yeah, if it's yours, that's
Yep.
perfect. That's really cool.
Let's see. How about a question about how do you get into the schools? Like, is it a barrier when teachers are hesitant or there's only so much time that they have? How do you kind of get into if you don't already have a connection?
I think it kind of depends. I mean, for us, it really, I guess, depends on how open the school is. I think our biggest barrier sometimes is the front desk staff. There are some unfriendly ladies out there that just really don't want you to leave your flyer. They just don't, you know, they really don't. And then there's some wonderful front desk people. So I think we are able to get more into the school if the administration and the the administrative secretaries are open to it. But we get our best results from word of mouth. If a teacher likes our program, we make sure he or she has flyer in hand, and we ask if they can please provide it to people at their school. And then we get great connections that way. And then we just build email lists and try to go back to people each year, especially people that we've had a great experience in their classroom. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, Tokina, but we do have classrooms where behaviorally we don't get enough support from the teacher, and it just doesn't, there's really no purpose to complete the program because of the extreme behavior. So we always tell the education staffers, if you need to end, you know, of course we always do it super professionally. And there are some schools we might let the teacher know, not schools, classrooms, we might say, you know, it wasn't very effective because the classroom just wasn't inviting. We're not inviting, I'm saying it wrong, but just letting them know it wasn't the best use of everyone's time. And so I'm not afraid to tell our educators, we don't want to waste time. We have limited resources. We have all these kids. Let's make sure that we're in classrooms where teachers are going to support us being there and the behavior is at least acceptable.
I guess I haven't specifically had that because like I said, usually my teachers are very supportive. And if they do have some of those students who are acting out, usually they have a para that helps them with that. I know there's been a few times where the teacher will take like 2 students out just so that I can continue the program. But again, you know, it goes back to I'm not in there really long. I mean, I think my longest program is an hour, and that's with the older students, definitely. Otherwise, it's just those kids are kept on such a fast-paced schedule. You lose them if it's much more than that. So But I kind of do the same thing. Like I found my foot in the door with my kids' own teachers. And then from there, I just build email lists. And I still send it out. Like here, we have a lot of teacher turnover. And so every year I'm trying to figure out, okay, who's the new third grade teacher here? And, like this year I didn't get to build that connection with one of the new third grade teachers. And it was like, oh, I was like, just kind of mad with myself, but I'm like, it'll come, so you're not going to win them all. You just got to find one foot in the door. And I think for me, the younger grades are easier. And then I can work my way up. And then once those teachers start talking, like you said, word of mouth, it'll spread. So yeah, whether you go to maybe a principal and pitch the idea that way, this is what our soil conservation district is offering. Or if you start with a specific teacher, because I guess in my experience, if the teacher wants to do it and they want to have you in, they're just like, I just go in to that front desk and be like, okay, I'm going into second grade today, Mrs. So-and-so invited me in and I get checked in.
I mean more if like we would bring flyers in and say, can you give these in the teacher boxes? And you have some that, don't want to do that. And then you have some that are really helpful.
Oh, okay.
So that way I think, you kind of know what school you can get into and what school you can't. But no, if a teacher has invited us, I would be like, you can't stop me. We're going into room 6.
Okay, and I misunderstood you because I was like, well, man, if they want you in there,
it's good to clarify. And then I think also, if you have like, you guys have, such a manageable number of schools. So I don't think it happens this way, but I think for us and like other districts that have like a bigger number of schools, I also encourage people who haven't started yet to just start with like a single grade. Like just work on third grade, just work on second grade. I noticed one of the grant recipients developed like a B presentation, very focused on second grade. So they're all set for second grade. And I think it goes, you said during your presentation, Tokina, like you don't have to kind of come out doing everything. And that's exactly right. You could just have one great presentation. You just go to second grade until you can do the next level,
All great advice. All right, that looks like the end of the questions. In the interest of everyone's time, we're a little bit over today, but thank you for sticking with us. Thank you, Tokina and Mandy. Those were great presentations. Again, we will post the recording of this on our website. Give me a couple days. I'm not super techie, so it might take a little bit, but it will be up there. So if you had folks who weren't able to attend, they can certainly watch it after the fact and reach out to any of us if there are additional questions. And hopefully we will see you all next month. So thank you and have a great rest of your day, everyone.